All right. Some of this is going to be things we've talked about before in conjunction with other subjects, particularly we talked about Greece. So some of this seems really familiar. That's just good. It means that you've seen some of this before. But most of it's going to be new information to us. We're going to talk about the largest empire that probably ever existed. There's some question. China had an empire that was really, really close. But Rome, at the height of their power, is going to rule in 3 continents. They're going to have power over almost all of Europe. They're going to reach into Asia, and they're going to reach into North Africa. And this is a time period before Christ existed, okay? So a phenomenal exercise of power. Rome was going to become so powerful at this time period that it was said that that if you hurt a Roman empire, or a Roman citizen, that the full might of Rome would come down on you. Y'all ever heard the word decimate? What does it mean to decimate something?
To completely destroy it with no mercy.
Yeah, if I said that I was going to decimate your army, that would mean I'm going to destroy it without mercy. Good, very good. Decimate is actually comes from a Latin word. Deci means 10, right? Like decimal, right? And decimate had 2 meanings. One was if you went against Rome, we would destroy 1/10 of your military just as punishment. So like if your army lost a battle, they'd kill 1/10 of them as punishment. The other thing was that sometimes it was said that Rome would kill to the 10th degree. What that means is if you commit a crime against a Roman citizen, they would kill you and then kill 10 degrees of your family member. So you, your brothers, your sisters, your parents, your grandparents, your children, all the way out. They would wipe you out. They were so powerful that people were afraid of these, okay?
How did they fall?
Huh?
How did they
We'll get to that later on. It's been compared to the United States in a lot of ways. In fact, the United States is sometimes called the New Rome because of how powerful we got in the 20th century, okay? All right, so we're going to talk about Rome ruling the West. The area that we're talking about, excuse me, I'm going to kill this light just so you can see it a little better. The area that we're talking about is right here on Italy. How do you recognize Italy on a map? Come on, look at it. What does it look like?
A boot?
Looks like a boot, okay? So if you're looking for Italy, you look for this high-heeled boot sticking out in the Mediterranean, okay?
What about that was like blue?
You can't see like a boot with a toe and a heel,
Okay.
okay?
That was like not.
And it's down here kicking Sicily. So if you're looking for it, Africa's to the south and Europe's up here to the north. This is actually part of Europe, okay? The part we're actually talking about at the start of this is this little city right here called Rome. And this city, which is going to start off as a village, as nothing, is going to end up controlling everything. Okay? It's going to be an amazing story as we go through this. Geographically, Rome is in an ideal spot. Look at it. What's ideal about it? Why would this be a good spot for someplace to start?
Peninsula.
There's water all around.
Okay, it's on a peninsula, so there's water all the way around it. This part's the Mediterranean Sea. This is the Adriatic Sea. So this sticks out, and it controls all of the Mediterranean. If you want to do any kind of trade, you've got to go right by Rome, right? So this is going to become a trade center. Its basic location is going to be important. Plus, these are the Alps, the tallest mountains in Europe.
They have good protection.
So they get good protection from the north. They have protection from the sea as you come here. It's very hard to invade Rome, okay? So it's just it won the lottery of geography. Plus, this is a plain right here where food will grow well. So they're able to control all that. So let's look at the history of ancient Italy just a little bit. Write that down. That's your next subsection. History of ancient Italy. I know it's hard to read up there. When you change from PowerPoint to Google Slides, it changes my fonts sometimes. History of ancient Italy. And Italy was made up of tribes. What's the difference between a tribe and a nation? What do you think?
Tribes are littler and have less people and are more kind of
Okay.
tight-knit.
That's true. They're always smaller. Tribes are usually familial. That means that they're related. They're very closely related to the family. A nation is a much larger group of people with a larger geographical area. Usually, the major tribes in Italy, and there were a bunch of them. You don't have to write these down yet, but we'll talk about it. You had the Etruscans up here. You had the people of Latium. These people are going to become called the Latins eventually. You had Greeks down here. The early Romans were just kind of right there in that little area. Over here you had the Carthaginians, they're in North Africa. The Celts or the Gauls are up here in Europe. All of these different tribes are kind of warring against each other. And if you were a space alien and you were just dropped here, didn't know anything, and you saw this map, would you predict that the Romans would be the ones that ended up winning it all?
No.
No, little bitty Rome.
You'd figure that whatever that, yeah.
The Etruscans probably, Etruria, or maybe the Gauls up here, because if you saw the whole map, this was huge, they were massive. But you certainly wouldn't think little Rome would, okay? So, what?
How did they win?
We'll get there. So the first group I want to talk about are the Latins. The Latins are the people that settled in the plains of Latium. They settled in the plains of Latium. What is a plain? Anybody know what that word means? Geographically?
It's a very just flat area that usually grows food well.
There you go. Usually we call it a flat grassy plain, flat grassy area, okay? Think about, you've ever driven through North Texas or Nebraska or the whole center of the United States is the Great Plains. Large, flat, agricultural area. That's this area right here that you're looking at in the center of Italy. And in the middle of all this, they're going to form the city of Rome right along the Tiber River. That shouldn't surprise you. We've seen it over and over again. River Valley civilizations, okay? Why is a river the perfect place to start a civilization? Somebody else. I'm going to call on somebody in a second.
Because they've got trade route and there's plenty of water and transportation.
There you go. Provides transportation for trade, provides fresh water for you, provides food. A river valley is the perfect place to develop a civilization, okay? Everybody keeping up okay? The other group that's coming up here are the Etruscans. And while the Etruscans are not the ones that are going to dominate, some of their ideas are going to dominate. We had a lot of influence by them, right? Make sure you get these written down. The influence of the Etruscans. Things that we still have today that we think of as Italian or Roman is really Etruscan. The writing system that they used, the Latin writing system, is Etruscan. Now it's kind of Etruscan through Greece, and it's got a lot there. They took the Phoenician alphabet, they took Etruscan language, they took Latin pronunciations, but the writing system, the rules they went by was Etruscan. The religion of these ancient Romans was an Etruscan religion. And it's a pretty simple religion early on. The early Etruscan religion was very much a harvest religion. Like a lot of early civilizations, what they cared about was the gods of harvest. Because if you had a bad year, if you had bad weather, what happens to people?
They starve.
People starve because there was no way to preserve food for a long period of time, okay? We also developed the arch. Think about an arch in architecture, right? And something called the triumph. Y'all ever seen a military parade on TV or anything? Where they've got the military that's out there marching, showing off their weapons, and then behind them, a lot of times they'll have the general or the president or the king or whatever that's out there. His purpose is kind of to glorify him. Well, this was something that was developed by the Etruscans. Whenever a general would win a battle, he would come back and he would march through the streets with his slaves so people could see the slaves were the prisoners of war that he captured, and his large army, and the treasure that he captured, so all the people could see how great this general was. Yeah,
Was there a king around?
they had a king, yes.
But like, when did he come in?
Well, it would have been the time period we're talking about, 500 years before Christ, they still had a king. And they're gonna have a king for a long time.
So since they started off so little bitty, in that little spot was like the king who started like to just.
Well, the Etruscans were a little north of there. They were above the Romans. But yeah, they had a king that controlled a large area. And every time they beat up somebody and took their land, the king would have more power.
I would think that the Romans would be under just constant war because that's a.
They were, and we'll see why they're gonna win in a minute. But the interesting thing about their triumph was they always had somebody behind the emperor, and allegedly he is whispering to the emperor that you are not a god, or you are not infallible. And the reason they did this is because they wanted this guy to be recognized as great by the people. But they also wanted him to realize that he is not without mistake. He can't just abuse his power. There's somebody there saying, you're not a god. You can make mistakes. You are not perfect, okay? And they're kind of whispering that to him the whole time this parade's going. Sometimes I think our presidents need to hear that, You're not a god. You can make mistakes. Or instead of this echo chamber of you're always perfect. This is an example of Etruscan art. Anybody know what that is? I bet somebody can guess. What's it look like?
A mermaid?
Well, it does kind of look like that. It's not. These people are actually sitting behind this. This is a sarcophagus. This would have been the cover for a coffin. This would have been where somebody was buried.
Like a mummy.
Okay? They didn't have mummies, but they would bury people. This would be for royalty, a very elaborate coffin kind of thing. Would you call this, we have what we call high art and low art. Low art is like art anybody could do, very simple.
Like a banana duct taped to the wall.
Low art is like the stuff I would do in art class if I was an art student, okay? High art is something dramatic and new and different that takes a lot of skill. Would you call this high art or low art? I would call this high art. I think this is difficult.
Is that just like stone brick right there?
This is probably, I don't remember for sure, but this is probably made of fired clay. Okay? That would have been real common at that time period. And I'll look it up, but I'm not sure.
They know how
about it.
to shape stuff.
It's pretty impressive. Now, the later Roman art's going to be much more impressive. But early on, this is Etruscan. All right, so let's get to Rome. How was Rome founded? Y'all know what a myth is? What is a myth? That's
It's like a story that someone tells, like a bedtime story.
okay, sometimes.
But it's not like.
I usually say that a myth is a fiction that we agree to believe. Okay? We know it's not true, but we agree to believe it anyway. Now, are there any American myths?
Yes.
You ever heard the story of George Washington chopping down the cherry tree? The story that George Washington chopped down his dad's favorite cherry tree, and his dad came to him and said, "Who chopped this down?" And Washington famously said, "I cannot tell a lie, I chopped down your cherry tree." That was a story to tell us how honest Washington was, right? And we've repeated that story for hundreds and hundreds of years. Well, about 200 years now, a little over 200 years. It never happened. Anybody really believe that George Washington chopped down his dad's cherry tree and then went to him and said, "I cannot tell a lie, I chopped down your cherry tree"? No. But we agree to believe it because it tells a bigger story. It tells a foundational story of America. Christopher Columbus discovered America. We agree to believe that, right? We have all been told our whole life Christopher Columbus discovered America, right?
Yes.
In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But in reality, we all know that when Columbus got here, what did he find? 65 million Native Americans already living here. How do you discover a place that 65 million people already live? It's a myth that we've agreed to believe, okay? Well, the mythical founding of Rome is a story that the Roman people agreed to believe.
Okay, what the heck is this picture supposed to say?
I'll explain it to you in a minute. It's a disturbing picture.
A
Very.
little bit.
The myths usually have some aspect of truth to them. They take a grain of truth and they blow it out of proportion. Again, Christopher Columbus did come to America.
He just didn't
He
discover.
just didn't really discover it. George Washington was an honest man, but he probably didn't cut down the cherry tree, okay? There's something in there. Well, this is the story of two brothers, Romulus and Remus. By the way, write those names down because I think they're great names for your future children. Romulus and Remus, especially if you have twins.
I really would hate to be,
Yes, you
Like
would.
your grandchild?
Yes, you would. I'm not allowed to name anything at home anymore.
Jesus Christ.
Romulus and Remus were two children, and they were orphan children. There's different versions why. One story says that their parents abandoned them. One other story says that their parents died. But for whatever reason, they're orphan children. They're left out in the wilderness. And according to the legend, they were found by a she-wolf. What's a she-wolf? Female wolf. Okay? They're found by a she-wolf, and they're raised by this she-wolf.
Bull crap, that she wolf would eat their little she buds.
So they're raised by a she-wolf, and upon coming of age, Romulus and Remus set out on their own.
So like, didn't
So you're telling
the Jungle Book?
Yeah, I like
Tarzan
this.
about raised by wolves.
Yep, Tarzan with the apes is a version of this story.
Did you say you're telling me that this is where Mowgli came
The
from?
real movie one.
It's probably a version of the story, yeah.
They like the wolves.
Yeah, it's probably a version of the story, Jungle Book.
Tiger is always trying to kill
But,
so,
So these guys were raised by wolves, whatever, and then they go off and they decide to found themselves their own little villages. And Romulus goes and builds his city, his town, gathers people around it, and he builds a beautiful rock wall around it. Remus gathers his people around, and he builds a village of wood with a wooden wall overtaken. Well, then Romulus and Remus have a falling out, like brothers do.
why does it
Because
sound like the three little piggies? One second.
there you go, exactly. The three little pigs is probably a version of this story. Romulus and Remus each have these, and I don't know if y'all have brothers or sisters, but there ain't no fight like a brother or sister fight, okay? Ain't no fight like a family fight, okay? So they start warring against each other, and Remus's city falls because it's made of wood. Romulus's city stands. In fact, in one legend, Remus finally jumps the wall of Romulus's city, Rome, named after him, and Romulus kills his brother, hits him with a stone and kills him, and says, this is what will happen to anybody that ever breaches the walls of Rome.
He did what, Jim?
Hit him in the head with a stone, killed him, and said, this is what will happen to anyone who breaches the walls of Rome. So if you attack us, you're going to die. Okay? Now, is there any truth to this story, do you think?
Maybe.
I don't think the she-wolf part's true.
No.
I probably don't even believe Romulus and Remus existed. But most historians believe that this is the story of the Etruscans and the Romans, because the Etruscans, we know today, built largely of wood. The Romans built of stone, and they went to war together, and eventually the Romans won out. So it's a myth explaining what happened, okay? And yes, as you pointed out, the fairy tale of the Three Little Pigs is a version of this story. It has the same moral to it, okay? And why do they agree to believe it? They agree to believe it because of the end of the story. What was the end? What did Romulus say?
Anyone who breaches
The walls of Rome shall be built.
Yes. If you, put that in English for me. If you were to say it today, how would you say it?
If anyone comes.
Not you, I want to hear from him.
You covered my territory, I kill you again.
There you go. There you go. You cross my property line, you're dead. Right? It's a very East Texas thing to say. All right? Who knows? Maybe we're the new Romans. But that's why they agreed to believe it. It gave them a foundational myth of strength. And we like foundation myths of strength. Okay? We want to believe that we're special. All right. The Roman Republic, 509 BCE to 21 BCE. I'm sorry that's hard to read. 509 BCE to 21 BCE. What does BCE mean?
Before Christ.
Before Christ or before the Common Era, right? It's the old BC. We used to call it BC, but because people got bent out of shape about it being a Christian base, we changed it to before the Common Era and Common Era. But it's the same thing as the old BC and AD, okay? So, why are these numbers backwards? Why does it start at 509 and then go to 22?
Because technically 509
Why around like
BCE is.
27, not 24?
Or 27, I mean, it is 27, I'm sorry. Because,
Technically 509 BCE is further back than.
that's right, because they're negative numbers. If it was a timeline, you start at 0 and you go backwards, right? Very good, very good.
27 group, 7.
All right, so let's look at what the government looked like of Rome. My turn. Rome is a republic. What's a republic? Oh, this is scary. Every day, your entire time, y'all stand up and you put your hand over your heart and you say the Pledge of Allegiance. And you say, and to the republic for which it stands. And you don't know what a republic is? Our government's a republic. A republic is a government where you elect your leaders. Okay? Now I know you're all going, that's a democracy. Well, a republic's a type of democracy. In a democracy like they had in Greece, everybody votes.
None of us were thinking that because none of us knew that.
In a true democracy like Greece, everybody would vote on every law. In a republic, instead of doing that, we would elect some people to make our laws for us. So, give you an example. If we were making classroom rules in a democracy, we would all vote on what the rule would be. In a republic, we would probably elect 2 people from the classroom, and those 2 people would write our laws for us. Okay?
I'll write a little.
So you're still voting, but you're voting for somebody to rule for you. That's what Rome was.
Is this a republic?
Yeah, write this down. Let's look at what Rome's government looked like. They had 2 consuls, the rulers of Rome. So instead of like a president, they had these 2 consuls that would make the decisions. What do you think about that idea of having 2 leaders?
I feel
Sounds
like it
like-
get out of hand real easily because one would disagree with something.
It can become very difficult, and we'll see later on it's going to get out of hand when the 2 consuls are going to go to war against each other eventually. But it's going to take a long time. This works for a while. It creates a moderate government. Here's the problem. I think if you're going to have more than one executive, you should have 3. It should be an odd number. So one group could outvote the other. If you have 2, what do you do if they both if they don't agree? There's no answer, right? So these guys, they're kind of like co-presidents. Okay? Then there's a group called the Senate. The Senate is kind of like our Senate. It's one of our Congress, part of our Congress. And they represent the group that we call the patricians. The patricians, they're the upper class. This is the rich people. Okay? And they write laws. There's also a second house called the Tribal Assembly. The Tribal Assembly is voted on by the plebeians. This is the middle class and not really the poor, because the poor didn't own land and you had to own land of it. But they wrote laws. So for a law to pass, both of these guys would have to agree, they'd have to pass both of these, and then the consul would have to agree. Does that sound familiar at all? Guys, we stole this. I could very easily say President, Senate, House of Representatives. And it's the same government we have today. Now, it didn't operate exactly the same. There's never an exact. But our government that we developed was based on this principle. And originally, we had the same development where the Senate was kind of the voice of the rich because it was elected by the states, and the House of Representatives was the voice of the common people. Today, it's not so much, but it was at one point a pretty big deal. So that's why we study this. This is where we get our ideas from. And it worked pretty well in Rome for a long time. At least until these guys decided to raise armies and fight each other. All right? And that's kind of the warning we give in history is if you let these guys get too much power, you have a civil war and your country collapses. The power needs to be here. If the power shifts up to here, we have a problem. And the United States, since about 1940, has been shifting power up a little bit every year. Okay? Everybody have this? All right, so they're going to pass a law called the 12 Tables in 450 BCE. So that's about 2,400 years ago. Okay? The 12 Tables are a written law that is passed under the control of this Republican Roman government. And it's going to be important because for the first time in history, they're going to give political and social rights to the plebeians. Before this, the patricians had all the rights. The plebeians just had to follow the rich. The rich ran everything, and the middle class and poor just followed. But this time they said, no, even the poor have rights. Now, slaves didn't have rights yet, but it's a big step forward. And by the way, I'm using the word slave here. Slave does not mean black at this time. A slave was, you became a slave in ancient Rome in two ways. One, you were captured in war, or two, debt slavery, where you owed somebody money and you couldn't pay it back, so you would be sold into slavery to pay the debt off. And it wasn't generational. You could be a slave and your child could be free. So that's a little different. Debt slavery makes sense. I mean,
Will you
better
ever
than
get out
anything
of
else.
slavery?
What?
If you go to slavery, will you ever get out of it or no?
Depends on how the contracts and all are written, but yeah, you could buy your way out or earn your way out.
How do you make money if you're a slave?
Well, what you do is, like, if you went into debt slavery, you couldn't pay your debts to somebody, you owe somebody $10,000. You would then go and become his slave, and when you made that much value back to him, he could let you free.
Well, that's a lot of money back then.
Yeah, they didn't have dollars. It's very, very hard to even compare that to today because wealth was measured in
How much land you own.
land, in agriculture, and cattle, and they had gold and silver too, but that's not really how they measured it. Hurry up. This is a picture of what the 12 tables look like. Now you can see down here it's been written over so you can see what it says. This is an example of Latin writing. So you can kind of get some kind of a feel.
That looks almost like a dog.
It's interesting that you say that because we're going to see that a lot of what becomes Christianity comes out of this type of Rome. All the epistles in the Bible were written at a time period when Rome was controlling the area. All right, so where are decisions made in Rome? Political decisions were made at the Roman Forum. And the Roman Forum was in the center of Rome, and it was a beautiful, beautiful area where everybody could meet. And this is what's left of it today, okay? If you go to Rome, you can walk through it. There's ruins of this. Think about this. 2,500 years old, and there's still parts of it standing. That's impressive. But it would have been much more impressive at the time period. This would have been a whole building. But a central forum area where all the men would come to meet. Women didn't come to meet because they didn't have any rights yet. But all the men that owned the land, at least, would gather together and talk politics and meet. It was a powerful, powerful idea. And if you ever get to see this, it is absolutely incredible to see. If you ever get to go to Rome, this is the part of Rome you want to go to. Don't go to the rest of it. It's dirty, filthy, and nasty. But this particular part is beautiful. Rome also had one of the greatest road systems in the history of the world. I'm trying to stay 6 feet away from y'all so I can pull this down so y'all can hear me, but otherwise I'd have mine on too. You ever heard the statement, all roads lead to Rome? Anybody ever said that to you? It's a kind of common statement you'll hear a lot. A lot of older people say, all roads lead to Rome. And what they mean is, no matter what path you take, you're going to end up at X spot. Well, that actually comes from this time period when literally all roads led to Rome. As Rome conquered all this area eventually, they built road systems out to each one. And if you got on any of the major roads and started walking, they all ended up there, always. Because that's the center of the empire. That's a good way to control an empire. And the Roman roads were awesome. In fact, some of them are so impressive that they're still being used today. Okay? Now, we wouldn't call it impressive by today's standards. They're rough. They're done by laying rocks, okay? But some of those roads are almost 3,000 years old, and they're still passable. Think about how long our roads last. I don't know if it's about you, but I live on a county road, and I've lived there 20 years, and I bet I've watched them repave it 15 times, okay? We could probably take a lesson from this, right? This is an example of a Roman road. This is the Avian Way. Now, I don't think you'd want to go driving down this real fast in your car. It'd be rough. But are you going to get stuck? It's pretty impressive. This road's 2,500 years old. That's some impressive architecture, okay? And they still use it. Cars do go down this, okay? They also built aqueducts. Write this down. Anybody know what an aqueduct is? See if you can figure it out from the word. Y'all are smart. What's this mean?
Aqua, like water?
Water. In Spanish is aqua, but in Latin, aqui. Okay? Aqui became aqua in Spanish.
No, it's like aqueducts that lets out water.
Well, duct. Think about what do the ducts in your house do? Not duck. Duct.
I don't know.
Like the air, it pushes the
Carries air, right?
So they
Ducts.
carry water.
Yeah, these are things that carry water. Okay, and if you look at them, they're massive, and they went all the way up into the mountains. Okay, so when the snow melted, the snow would gather, and then it would gather in the tops of these aqueducts, and they had a very, very slow, gradual declination. They went down all the way into Rome, and the snow would melt. It would gather in these, I don't know what to call them, like ditches on the top. They were bricks, but they would be set up in here, and the water would run down, and it would gather in Rome. They had running water in Rome year-round.
That's cool.
And it came from the snow melt. How impressive were these? These were still bringing water to Rome until World War II. They would probably still be bringing water, but we bombed most of them.
Who even bombed
in
it?
World War II. Huh?
Who even bombed it?
We did. We bombed them because Italy was our enemy, and we wanted to stop the water from getting to them. But think about how massive these are. These are people right here.
You can't even see those
These
people.
are people standing here. They're massive.
Oh,
And they have to be. They get smaller as they go
I see
up.
a little body.
Okay? There's a person right there. Can you see it?
Yeah, I bet he's scared.
right there. Okay? So this is a massive construction, and they use the arch system. All these arches, this is by far the strongest way to build a building. Okay? It's something that most of the world didn't do. Before this, we used the lintel design to build things. You've all seen lintel designs, they're doors, right? You got a,
Oh,
that's a lintel. Is this stronger, or is this stronger?
that.
The art.
The arch, why?
Cause
It
the way
resists
like,
wind more.
the way the pressure, like, it wouldn't like,
Because these rocks, there's a piece at the top that's shaped like that. So the pressure, when it comes down, the pressure pushes in on this spot and that holds everything together. On this, there's nothing holding it together. Eventually, this will collapse. Okay? You can build so high with this lintel system, but you can build,
So what does that look like today?
what does this look like?
No, the
that.
picture.
This is a fairly recent picture. It still stands. I mean, the reason it doesn't carry water anymore is because we
Are there
blew
a lot of
parts out of
these?
it.
Are there
There's a lot of them around Italy, yeah, there's a bunch of them.
Will they ever like rebuild them, or is it just?
Probably not, because it's not, there's no point in using them to bring water anymore, that they have other ways to do it that are more effective. And honestly, most historians would rather have the broken version than a replaced version that's not real.
Yeah.
So, that's my problem with the Alamo. If you ever go to the Alamo is the worst preserved historical monument in Texas. It's
Didn't
terrible.
you get kicked out of the Alamo?
Twice.
Why did you get kicked out?
Because he was trying to preach what he knew instead of
Argued it.
God, so.
Here's another example of Roman architecture, the Roman Colosseum.
I wanna go there.
It's incredible to see. It's not nearly as big as you think it is.
It used to be
Uh,
way bigger.
Yeah, it was larger, but it's not as big as we all think it is. I mean, these are cars, to give you an idea of how big it is. But again, could they have built this without the arch? No way. No way could they have. What do you think the Colosseum was used for?
Fighting and stuff.
Everything. It was like a sports Colosseum today.
They used to flood it and put ships in there and have battles.
They would. They did sometimes.
How would they flood it?
I'll show you. So this is the Colosseum, and this is the inside of it. And people would gather around here. In the old days, there was wooden decking over this. What you're looking at is like the basement. The decking's been
Well, they
gone.
kept all the prisoners and animals.
The animals and the gladiators that would fight would be kept down there.
Yeah.
They actually had a system like elevators. You know, it was
Yeah.
people powered, and you would be you'd raise up into the into the Colosseum
movie
and
about
fight.
that, ain't it?
Yeah, it's pretty terrible, but no, it's a good movie. It's bad history. But the aqueducts that came in, they could open up one aqueduct and they could flood this area in here. And they'd have ships and they would little boats and they would have fake naval battles.
Oh, I was gonna say, how big, how would boats, like, go?
Well, they were
Like little?
They were not massive, they were bigger than like we see out on the lakes, but they weren't really big.
How does that fit right there?
It's bigger than you think it is, I mean, it's big enough for that. These are people like here. See people?
Yeah, I see that, but I'm.
So, wait, hold on, so basically it's not that tall, but it's like pretty big around.
It's a good size.
Where do
I
they
mean,
get all the water from to flood it
The
though?
Out of the aqueducts.
Oh, that's where, okay, gotcha.
All right, so, and they would have these fabric covers that they could put up, that they could open and close, that would shade the area around here. So it was kind of impressive.
They had it figured out.
How long do you think it took them to build that?
I don't know, I'd have to look it up. Why do you think they built it though? Why would they spend that much money doing this?
Entertainment.
Yeah, okay.
So more people would come when they heard about it?
So they can make money off of it.
There was money and there were taxes involved. The bigger thing was, the emperors that built these wanted their names on them so they could say, I did this for you.
Yeah.
Okay? Because remember, they're elected. They're elected at this point. I gave this to you. And it kept the crowds happy. Because Rome was a place that could break out into violence very, very easily. And if the people wanted violence, you could give them this, and that would satiate their violence. So they wouldn't burn your city to the ground. Instead, they get to go watch these guys fight to the death.
Some of the gladiators, were they Romans?
The gladiators were usually slaves.
Wait, did they actually fight to death?
Yeah.
Gladiator were warriors that would go, that they would train, and they would go in here and fight to the death, sometimes against animals, sometimes against each other.
And or they fight against each other while they have animals on canes kind of.
Yeah,
fight 'em.
I
sometimes.
heard it was like, I heard that they were like refs and they were very fair and very rarely would they.
No.
No, they were not at all fair. The people they did not want to be there. They were slaves.
They'll
were-
cut your
were
head
bought.
off and feed it to the tiger.
7th and 8th grade, report to your next class.
That was way too fast. We'll pick up again here tomorrow.
Charlie, you can just bring that